Hello and welcome to the first Destination Wellbeing broadcast on behalf of Destination Uri. In this evening's show and over the next few weeks and certainly over future programmes, we're going to be discussing a wide variety of topics around the area of health and wellbeing, covering everything from nutrition to fitness right through to holistic therapies to yoga, such a wide range, beauty, cosmetics, everything that we need in order to look after both our physical and our emotional and I suppose our spiritual well-being as well. So there should be something in here for everybody. Certainly for me, one of my goals in life is to make sure that I live the healthiest and happiest life possible, and on that journey I have come across a number of wide variety of different professionals, different people from various different walks of life whom I'll be introducing to you, our viewers, over the next few weeks. And I hope that somewhere in there each of us will find something that will work towards just helping our lives along and helping us along this journey that we're all on. We have, just to remind ourselves that and to share with our viewers and just to reinforce for them that we're not actually medically trained professionals. We are all professionals in our own field. However, we would always advise that if you have any concerns around health, well-being, or any specific worries or concerns about your own body, either physically or mentally, that you will have a chat with your own GP and make an appointment to see them. Okay, so this evening my first guest is a lady called Kathleen Faye, and Kathleen was part of my own journey and has brought me to where I am, a part of the process of bringing me to where I am today. Shortly after visiting Kathleen to go through the journey process, I then trained as a reflexologist. I went on to do Reiki therapy. My most recent training was in baby reflexology and in relaxed kids therapy. So I'm a relaxed kids coach, and I also retail a range of organic skincare products. So such a wide variety of products, interests, everything going on there. And my earliest memory prior to meeting Kathleen back in 2006 was that I remember heading off to school doing my 11 plus with aromatherapy and essential oils dropped onto my sleeve for concentration, for relaxation. And I suppose it's true to say that for many people, Kit, there's often aromatherapy is probably the one holistic therapy that everybody knows. It's the one that we've all heard something a little bit about, and it's one that I still use every single day. I use oils in one shape or form at some point of the day, and there's usually always a solution somewhere in there in essential oils. But back just to yourself, Kit, and how we met was through, as we said, the journey process. So maybe if you just want to introduce yourself to our viewers and give them a little bit of detail about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Kathleen Faye, but most people know me as Kit Faye. And as you know, Joanne, I'm a retired primary teacher, long retired. But along the line, I have also trained like yourself in so many therapies. My first one would have been counselling way back in the 70s. I also trained as a yoga teacher, a massage therapist, a Reiki therapist, a psychotherapist. Eventually I got around to being trained as a psychotherapist. I also did quantum touch, metamorphic technique, all sorts of therapies. And it was almost as if my husband used to say to me, "What are you looking for? What are you searching for?" But as I say, I found what I didn't know I was searching for, because in all those therapies, you know, I had to have work done on myself, because naturally you won't be let loose on people unless you have your own work done.
This is the old saying, physician heal thyself.
Physician heal thyself. And, you know, in all the work I had done, there was something still not right. There was something that I hadn't accessed. I'm saying now, looking back, and it was almost as if I had a hole in my soul that you drive a bus through. I had, you know, you'd hear of people having no visible means of support. I had no invisible means of support. I was nervous, I was unsure of myself, I was lacking in confidence, I was whatever. None of the work had done what it should do until I came across the journey. And I came across the journey, which is, as you say, reasonably new to Ireland, in 2004 when Brandon Bayes herself came to Dublin. And I just heard it by accident or providentially that I was meant to hear about it. And I went off and did the weekend in Dublin with Brandon, and it just changed my life completely. it's almost, people say it turned my life around, but it turned me right side up.
Yes.
And straight away, you know, I wasn't physically sick, but really mentally and emotionally I was probably in a heap.
Yes,
but
and
I didn't know
it's often those bits that are the most difficult parts to reach. We know when we've got a sore leg, and we know when we've got a sore arm, but our mental and our emotional stuff is often the one.
So I had no choice but to go and train in this. I couldn't continue doing what I was doing, especially the psychotherapy, because the arrogance of me to tell you what was wrong with you and what would fix you. And I had no choice, and I couldn't pretend I didn't know about the journey, so I had no choice but to go to the credit union, borrow big money, head off to England and Europe to train with Brandon. Okay.
And that training, Kit, for those who aren't maybe familiar with the journey, the basis of it and the core of it, what would you say is the important aspect of
it's
of
just
the journey?
A wonderful therapy. That I'd say Brandon Bay is almost as if she inadvertently developed it. Way back about 20 years ago, she was diagnosed with a football-sized tumour, the equivalent of 5 months pregnant. And she too was a holistic therapist, and naturally enough she didn't want to admit there was something wrong with her. So she left it until it was literally the equivalent of 5 months pregnant before she actually went to a medical doctor. And they said, you're just going to have to come in straight away, you're going to have to be operated on. And she begged them to give her a chance to work through her own holistic training, to do something about it. And sure, they said, no way, we can't let you, because I mean, this is serious, you know, get real here, you know, this is serious. And she said, please, how long will you give me? And they said, right, we'll give you 6 weeks, and if after 6 weeks you haven't reduced it considerably, we're going to have to take you in and operate. And she went away off and she did our raw food and our raw fruit juices, and she got her relaxation and all the rest of it. But nothing was happening until one day she was on a relaxation table, and she just gave up. She had tried everything and there was nothing more she could do, and she just gave up. And she fell into a complete state of peace and stillness and spaciousness and no disturbingness inside herself. And she put out a prayer, please, there must be something else I'm not doing. Is there something that needs to still be done so that I can be healed? And the one word that came up for her was forgiveness, because she had come from a very violent childhood. And she had done all the work on herself, like myself, and it hadn't worked. And she said, you know, I don't know how to forgive. So she prayed that she could forgive. And she realized she was able to forgive then, and she had realized that she was accepting her childhood before that, but she had never been able to forgive or known to need to forgive the people. And there is a gorgeous sentence somewhere which says, there are two beautiful sentences. One is, not forgiving people is like drinking poison and hoping somebody else will die. And the other one is a gorgeous quote of Mark Twain's which says, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that crushed it.
Yes, well that's...
So she did her forgiveness. She said she got up off the table and she thought she imagined it, her tummy just wasn't as taut as it had been. And over the next 6 weeks she continued to go within, into the stillness and into the healing that was within. And after 6 weeks, when she went back for them, where they thought they were operating on her, she was textbook perfect.
Yeah.
So from that she developed a step-by-step repeatable process whereby anybody can sit in the negative emotions that are in the body, old dead energy in the body from what happened to us in childhood and what happened to us through all our lives, that so disturbs our centre of well-being. And through that then she trained people, because I mean she was doing so well, she had to train people, and I'm one of the lucky ones who went and trained with her. And as I say, I have the best job in Ireland, because one of the first we had to work on, she wouldn't let us near people to charge for them until we worked with at least 50 case studies.
Yes.
And one of my first case studies, right back in I started training with her in October, and one of my first case studies in November was a neighbour of mine who was coming to me for Reiki. And I was saying, please try this journey. But you know, she was suffering from cancer for the second time around. Her sister had already died from it, and it was a very aggressive form of cancer. But now she was dying from heart failure from the treatment. And but she wouldn't let me do the journey. But anyway, I was heading off to England for one of my first training modules, and she was going into hospital to die from the heart failure. She said, please, maybe I'll give the journey a shot. And she came, and I had no training whatsoever in the journey. I just had the scripts of the basics of the journey, and she came in, she innocently and I innocently went through the journey with her, And today, 8 years later, 9 years coming in November, she is so healthy, she's so well, she's so vibrant, she's so together, she's so grateful to be alive.
Just as a tapping into that inner
truth of herself.
Inner truth, yes.
Yes, she's so well.
And it's interesting just that we're having this conversation at the moment. Just this week actually, the British Medical Journal have published an article just relating to how, I suppose, ineffective often traditional or Western medicine can be. And for many of us, it's often our only route. And whilst there's lots of different processes and different ways out there, I suppose for health and well-being, one of the key things to remember is that there are always options. In the example of Kit's neighbour, there are always options out there. It's just for each of us finding really that right one, the one that suits. And you talked there, Kit, about about childhood issues and childhood things, and a lot of the things I know whenever I did the journey myself, again, there was no real physical reason for processing or going through the journey. I just felt that it was something that had interested me, something I wanted to find out a bit more about. But very often it's very insignificant, or what we would imagine insignificant stuff. It's the simplest, easiest thing.
So almost insignificant, but she had made such a big deal of it.
Yeah, it had held on.
Her perception of it.
Yeah, yes. We'd held on, or we hold on to all of these things that go on, and they can impact on various different aspects of our life. And we talked about other therapies as well, Kit, and I suppose anybody that trains in holistic therapies often finds their path through various different ones. I think till we get the one that sits and the one that does what we need it to do. But I think each of those therapies, as we go along our way, are part of our story and part of our journey, and leads us to the next. They're like stepping stones to the next bit.
That is so true. Every single one of all I had done, literally what you say, was a stepping stone to open me and have me ready for the deep, deep invitation to go within that the journey was. Because especially my yoga, the training in yoga to go still and be within, because that's where the work is done. I mean, not only have we the answer, we are the answer. This is the good news.
And yoga is something that, again, I suppose a bit like the aromatherapy one, yoga is often one of those therapies that many people are really aware of, and I'm sure it's probably one of the most commonplace. And I've noticed now in recent times yoga popping into loads of different aspects of people's lives, which for me is a great, it's a great practice, and it's great to get into that and to have that daily process. I'd be a great believer in prevention's better than cure. So when we keep the momentum and keep the ball rolling, it keeps everything moving and keeps us mobile and keeps everything going.
Literally mobile. It works physically. It works on the body physically. It works mentally, and it also works spiritually. It's beautiful. The spiritual aspect of yoga is the one that I was most attracted to.
And it's often the one that gets missed and it's often the one that gets missed. But I noticed there, even with my relaxed kids groups, the kids love the stretching, but they love the stillness and they love the quiet time, and it's for a lot of us, it's what's missing in life.
And it's wonderful for children, you see, because they haven't yet got covered over. It comes so natural to them to be vibrant and alive, but also so still, because they haven't the disturbance inside them that we pick up along the way.
Brandon talks about a lovely point in her book, the diamond, and I'll let you explain the concept behind the diamond.
I always ask people, when they come in to me, do they know a new baby? And most people know a new baby, a niece or a nephew or a neighbour, or even a baby on a train. The way a baby, even on a train, draws attention to itself. It's just so vibrant. There's an energy coming off it. It's alive. It's literally, as you say, the diamond. And each of us was that brand new baby at one stage, untouched, unprogrammed. Okay, and then life happens. I mean, none of us were dropped down an enlightened chimney, sure we weren't.
No, that's
we pick up all sorts of things along the way. And I had a very interesting experience that I'm now using as part of my journey therapy, that happened to me since Christmas. We go dancing, but we go dancing with a neighbour whose husband died way back in the 70s, and we supported her all these years. And when we go dancing, my husband dances me first, naturally enough. He dances her, he dances me, he dances her. And it's almost that he used to be counting, you know?
Yeah, keep tabs on it, make sure one doesn't get more than the other.
He danced me, he danced her, he danced me, he danced her, he danced me, he danced her, he danced her again. Whoom! This, I didn't know what rose up in me. Okay, very interesting. And me being spiritual, I've all my work done. I mean, I coped with it and it didn't bother me and all the rest of it. And I always had an edge with her. You know, Mary's her name, lovely, lovely. But I always had an edge with her that I never knew what it was. And that night, you know, sometime during the night, I was aware that as an infant, my granny died when I was 18 months old. And wait till you hear the programme got in. Before 18 months old, that was running the show on me all those years after that. My granny, my father was the youngest of 5 children, 4 sisters and himself. And naturally on a farm in Cavan, I mean, you know, a son was very welcome.
Son, yes.
And when the next generation came, my brother was born first and then I was born. And come Saturday night when we were being washed, Peter, my brother, would be taken up to the fire and Granny would have the warm towel, and it wouldn't surprise me if she'd a wee hot whiskey for him.
He was the golden
you know,
boy.
Whatever. And my mum would say, come on Kit, the wind of the stairs will dry you. And that night, after the dance that night, I realised that the programme in me that was like a scream that went back forever was like, yeah, but I'm here too, what about me? And it had nothing to do with me as at the age I am now, you know, growing up, but the child inside was falling apart in me. And I said to myself, wow, what a revelation that I use now with almost all my clients. That it's, and I say, if I ever wrote a book, I'll not say I will or I won't, but if I ever would now, I'd call it The Hurting Child Within.
And that's
because here was me, at my age now, falling apart over something that happened. My granny died when I was 18 months old, so it happened before I was 18 months old. But the cry always, if you and your friends were out and I was with you and yous were all together and I was, you know, not included, there'd be an ache in me saying, yeah, but what about me? I'm here too. But I didn't know what it was until that specific night at the dance. And that light later on that I discovered. And now I see that what happens to us is, for all of the things that happen, because who doesn't live with some sort of trauma in childhood, be it an alcoholic parent or violence or you know, hardship, lack of money, separation, an illness, the death of an animal, if, you know, your dog or your cat or whatever, that as you say doesn't have to be big. But a belief gets in there, and almost always the belief I come across is, I'm not good enough or I'm not lovable. So this is a lovely one for me now to say, when somebody came to me in panic lately, and there was no talking, it's not that there was no talking to her, there was no talking to it. And then I said, listen, what age is the little one? And straight away she said, such and such, and she had it.
You got,
It wasn't the grown-up her was falling apart and in such a panic, it was the little angel soul at a particular age with stuff going on, and she was back there then throughout her life with that programme. And what the journey does is it accesses those unhealthy beliefs, clears them out, and puts in a true belief of the radiance of who we are, the radiance we were at a baby, that we still are, and that when we die and we say, what? Was this who I was all along? Why didn't somebody ever tell me? And it's like coming to the journey and doing all that. It's like dying before we die, so that we can live before we die, and we're supposed to live before we die, not after we die.
we need to get there. It's interesting just how you can talk about memories. About 2 years ago, I was back in we would have always went to Wexford on summer holidays as children, and we were back in a place which had been all done up. It was somewhere we used to go for lunch when we would have went on holidays, and it had been done up and readdressed and everything, and we were sitting, Mum and I were sitting there, and she said to me, what did you call this place? And we sat on for a few minutes, and it was, whilst it was, the location was familiar, the place wasn't familiar, so it had changed so much. And we were sitting, and out of nowhere we sat on and we had lunch, and suddenly halfway through lunch I pulled the name out of my head, which was maybe 25 years ago from I'd been in the place. And it struck me then how, if that really insignificant bit was
recorded.
plugged in, back recorded in there somewhere.
What else is in there?
You know, what else? And it was so insignificant.
Yes.
I mean, okay, there was significance around it because it was holidays and it was good memories and it was all those type of things. But our memories run and our emotions run so deep.
And lucky it was a happy one. But how many unhappy ones?
Well, that's, and many other things, or how many times were you told off by a teacher or by a, you know, and you shut down as a result of that.
And it's like a virus in the computer, and you know how unforgiving a virus is. It'll just not budge until you get rid of the virus. So too with these, while all those unhealthy beliefs in there, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, what's wrong with me, I'm not as good as everybody else, you know, I'm too big, too small, too fat, too thin, too whatever, too whatever.
all the other things.
We're not short of things to be running through our system.
Definitely not. And interestingly, it often reminds me, and I suppose with the good weather that we've been lucky enough to be having, I've been out in the garden quite a bit, and often the analogy that I use when I'm doing any of my workshops or any work is that I often remind people that, you know, if you go out into the garden and you pull the leaves off all the weeds, well, you'll have a nice clear garden for about 2 days till the weeds start to come back. But unless you get in and take the root of all the weeds out, then you're stuck with lots of weeds.
That was what I was attempting to explain at the beginning. In all the work I'd done on myself, it removed the leaves and it removed maybe the stem, but it never got at, and even if it got at the roots, it never got at the tap root. The one that went back forever, the one that told me, that had me telling myself I wasn't good enough, whatever. And that the beauty of the journey is that, as you know yourself, Joanne, you're asked to sit in your painful emotions, be they fear, anger. What we do is we run from them, we medicate them, we talk about them, we therapeutize them, okay, but in the journey you're asked to sit in your fear and not move. Old dead energy. Sit in your anger, sit in your guilt, your shame, your jealousy, your whatever. And it spontaneously or spiritually or whatever way, I don't know, it's just when you sit in it and don't make it wrong, it just is released, and then you're left in this state of stillness, this state of silence, space, joy, peace, love, grace, that Brandon Bayes calls source, which I call your soul. And the beauty of this is that you have accessed your soul, and then it's the soul does the work.
And all as well as...
And all as well, yes. And the soul is who we are, in the body, with all the things that happened. But the diamond of the soul is not touched, as you know. The diamond is unscratchable, unmarkable, untouched. And the beauty of this work is that not only is it spiritual work, as you can guess, and as you know yourself, but it's hugely scientific cellular work. There's a great writer, you know, called Deepak Chopra. I'm sure you've heard of him. But he's also he was an eminent surgeon in the States. And he had he was very interested where other doctors were interested in what made people sick. He was interested in what made people well and what made people recover. And one of the things he discovered was that through some act of grace or some spontaneous event, you know, a near-death experience or something like that, the access, that stillness, that grace, that source within, and that then did the work.
That's when we get into that root.
But he also came up with as well, as a scientist and as a surgeon, he realised that the cells kept renewing all the time. You know, I didn't bother going out in the sun this last few days because I just go from red to white. Okay, because what happens is our skin that was out in the sun in 3 weeks' time is gone.
Yeah,
and there's white skin back.
There's new cells there.
The lining of the stomach renews in something like 5 days. The liver renews in either 6 weeks or 6 months. I forgot to check which it was, but it doesn't matter which. And Deepak Chopra said, but how come if a liver that had cancer in January is completely renewed, still has cancer in June? He said there must be something happening that causes that. And he says the cells must be renewing regeneratively, with the degeneratively with the old stuff in them. And if we could get at the old memories or all the emotions that are in there and clear them out, would the cells renew regeneratively? And sure, he didn't know how to go about it. So Brandon Bayes inadvertently, lying on that plinth, inadvertently accessed that knowledge and that wisdom within, and cleared out, and so that then obviously what happened scientifically was her cells renewed regeneratively, where before that they kept renewing degeneratively. And this is the beauty of the journey, that is a double whammy. It works on this hugely spiritual level, but it also works on the everyday common or garden scientific cellular cell renewal. And this is what happens.
And it speeds up the process. Some people, I suppose, are lucky enough to to work through that work as a process, because obviously that's where healing can happen. But it's one of those things that can allow us to really to get to that by choice rather than just waiting for it to happen.
Waiting for it to happen at a near-death experience
or something that is uncontrollable. It allows us to take that bit of control for our health and our well-being.
And to step forward and meet your own healing 3/4 of the way. And it can happen spontaneously and instantaneously. A lady, do you remember I did a journey weekend last September?
Yes.
And a lady came who had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And sure, she and her husband were just in an absolute mess.
Yes.
And she went to the Hermitage in Dublin the following Wednesday for a follow-up. And they couldn't find a trace of it. She had no symptoms of it. That's 9 months ago now. As she says, they showed her brain scan with what she called the blobs on the brain, but they could find no symptoms of it. And 9 months later, she is so radiantly well. She's so joyous. She says, I wouldn't want to win the lotto because the lotto couldn't give me what this is giving me. Her sense of well-being, her sense of joy. And she knows that she had a hugely traumatic incident in her childhood that would stop anybody in their tracks and then call it multiple sclerosis. And she cleared that out. She innocently cleared it out. And spontaneously.
And she took the choice to go with a process that is there for everybody to really access.
But she wasn't expecting to be healed.
No,
she just came because the weekend was on and she trusted me that what I'd be offering would be good, and she turned up. She couldn't expect to be healed of something like that. And I understand that up until recently it was thought that the nerve endings couldn't renew, but now it has been discovered with MS that the nerve endings, actually all cells can renew, including the nerve endings.
It's and I suppose when we go back to the American scientist journal, the research journals that have been done there, they will state as well that at least 85% of all illness is emotionally based. So that gives us, that gives us, and I know that's one of Brandon's quotes and references
well, I have
as well.
first-hand experience of that. I think it was 2010. My husband wouldn't really, be that interested in the journey. He leaves it to Kit, and that's Kit's stuff, and he lets her get on with it or whatever. But he was so seriously ill in all of 2010, I mean, traumatically for both of us, especially for me. 5 times over 13 months, he died in my arms in the middle of the night. January,
so you were getting, you were getting all of the
January
the
with the big snow. Yes. He was totally unaware of it. March, June, October, and the following January, and why am I telling you this now? Yeah, I couldn't get him to do the journey, and he wouldn't do the journey. But what I realised what was happening was his emotions were so dammed up in him that they were knocking him out in his sleep and nightmares. He could control them during the day, but he had no control over them during the night. And now since then, he has just done a little bit of the journey and let a bit go, and another little bit of the journey, let another bit go, and another little, and over the last couple of years now, he's so radiantly well. And now that he's so radiantly well, my brother said one day, sure, Brendan could never hide his pain. He didn't see it when it was there in him, but when it was gone.
Yeah,
so my husband is alive because of it. And I mean, as you know, even before that, I'm just so passionate about the journey.
Without doubt, and you can that passion is there to be seen. And I suppose that's the interesting bit, is that often we are, you were saying, your husband was saying, Brendan was saying, that's Kit's stuff. We leave that to her, and that's the truth for all aspects of work as well. Is that often we need to just find the bit that's right for us at the time when it's right for us, and to see where things can bring us. But I think it's important that we're aware that these things are there, that there's options for them, and that they'll be there, and they'll kick into place at the right time and in the right place.
And especially for the men to avail of all these lovely stuff. By all means, we go to the doctors and whatever needs to be done. But especially for the men to open to this work, because I mean, we women are used to,
we're a bit more sharing and opening. And again, I often find, though, interestingly, whenever I have male reflexology clients, I find that their feet are much better than women's, because they look after themselves much more. They don't be sticking them into uncomfortable shoes and various things like that. But it's so true, when we only have to look at some of the suicide rates and things amongst men at the moment, and how high that is, to see where that can come. But
and it has been found recently, and certainly Brandon has found it through the journey, two things. First of all, she has come up with the theory that the depression is just a huge big cover-up blanket for our unwillingness to face these big emotions.
Yeah,
the fear, the dread, the shame, the guilt, the anger, the rage, the terror.
Yeah. We don't want to access.
And it's suicide then, and I mean, I'm not saying this lightly, God, I'm not saying it lightly, but that suicide too is almost an easier option than to face those huge emotions.
Yeah.
And if somebody can trust to say, right, I'll stay in my fear, I'll stay in my terror, and I won't move, and I'll go to somebody who can hold me safe, and who trusts that they're held safe in that absolute terror that must be there that drives people to suicide. And to stay in the terror and release the terror like old dead energy out of a pressure cooker.
It can have such transformative.
It's
as funny. I read a quote just yesterday that said, "What the caterpillar sees as the end, the rest of the world calls a butterfly." And
yes,
I thought,
indeed.
Isn't that you know, when we think there's nowhere to turn, if we can just hang on a little bit more, then we see
and
the
many
butterfly.
of us live and die as a caterpillar on our bellies.
Yeah, we don't.
We never let ourselves get the wings and fly and soar and be who we truly are.
And the other analogy that comes from that then as well is that, you know, if the caterpillar is forced, or the butterfly is forced too soon, then
the wings are damaged.
And if our logo has the butterfly in there as well for our destination Wellbeing. So we're almost at the end of our interview, Kate, this evening, and thank you very much for sharing your story so openly and so passionately.
I say I have the best job in Ireland, and I know I have the best job in Ireland. Yes,
well, that's,
you know, I just see people coming in such a state, and even in one visit, you know, getting such phenomenal results.
Yeah, such results.
The load's so lightened.
We have a set of journey cards here, and what I would ask you to do is just select a message somewhere in there. We'll just trust that the right message comes out. Just go with the flow, and we'll see what message. Oh, physical health. There we go. And I'll just share the message on this card for anybody that's listening in this evening or watching back on our podcast. Physical health. Your body is the sacred vessel you've been given to experience life, so honour it, cherish it, and nourish it. This card invites you to attend to your body's health and well-being in some way. Perhaps you need more rest or meditation, more nourishing food, or more exercise. This card may also be an invitation to undergo a physical journey process to clear out old cell memories and emotional patterns. Take some long, deep breaths in and out. Feel yourself growing spacious and still, and let your awareness go to a place of stress or tension inside your body. If it had words, what might it be saying? Just be still and listen. And how do the words make you feel? Be open to what your body is communicating. Surround the feeling with your own love. Open deeper and ask again. Your body is so grateful for any attention you give it. It will respond easily to your loving care. And I think that sums up perfectly.
That's very timely for that one to be
where
chosen,
we are, and hopefully what we'll be able to bring to our viewers over over future shows. So once again, just thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much,
You're very welcome.
For the opportunity of letting people in Ireland know about the journey.
Great, you're welcome, Kit, and thank you.
And
thank you for the
advertise or anything. It's just pure word of mouth. But as people get results, just people keep coming.
And thank you for the part that you played in my journey as well.
Indeed, a pure pleasure, a privilege.